Desert town of Red Canyon, Arizona had not seen rain in 11 years. Dust covered the streets, water tanks stood nearly empty, and every week more people packed their trucks and disappeared into the desert. The town felt like it was slowly dying beneath the endless Arizona sun. Then, one evening, as the sky turned blood red over the canyon, 3 armed riders appeared quietly on the horizon. They rode into town without speaking, watching everything with cold eyes. Before sunrise, half the town would be burning, and only one man would stand against them: Sheriff Ethan Cole. Red Canyon sat alone in the middle of the desert, surrounded by dry mountains and endless sand. Old wooden buildings leaned against the wind, rusty water towers creaked above empty streets, and dust rolled through town like ocean waves. Sheriff Ethan Cole rode slowly through the streets on his black horse, Ghost. People respected Ethan, but nobody truly knew him. Years earlier, he had worked as a military scout near the border until a failed mission took the life of his younger brother. After that day, Ethan disappeared into the desert and eventually became sheriff of Red Canyon. Now he protected the dying town alone. No family, no deputy, only silence. That same evening, 3 pickup trucks rolled into town, throwing dust across the street. Armed men stepped out wearing long desert coats and heavy boots. Their leader was Victor Kane, a former oil contractor who had become one of the most feared criminals in the region. Rumors claimed there was oil hidden beneath the desert land around Red Canyon, and Victor intended to own every inch of it. But Ethan refused to sell the town. Inside the old diner, Victor smiled across the table and quietly said, "You can't stop the future, Sheriff." Ethan stared back calmly before answering, "This town isn't for sale." The entire diner fell silent. That night, gunshots echoed across the canyon. Windows shattered across town. Water barrels exploded beside wooden buildings. Horses panicked in the streets, and smoke rolled through the desert wind. Chaos spread across Red Canyon as Victor's men frightened people into leaving. Families loaded their trucks before sunrise and disappeared down the highway. By morning, nearly half the town stood empty. The mayor begged Ethan to surrender before more destruction followed. But while standing near the edge of town, Ethan noticed something strange far beyond the mountains. Dark clouds were gathering over the desert. Rain clouds, impossible clouds. Ethan rode deep into the canyon toward an abandoned weather station built decades earlier during an old government project. Inside the station, dusty machines flickered weakly beneath broken lights. A retired scientist named Walter Briggs lived there alone, surrounded by maps and old storm equipment. Walter revealed shocking news. A massive desert storm was headed directly toward Red Canyon. It would be the first major rain in 11 years. But if the storm arrived too quickly, sudden flash floods would destroy the entire town. Victor Kane had no idea the storm was coming, but Ethan understood immediately. Now the sheriff faced 2 enemies at once: Victor Kane and the incoming storm. Ethan could have abandoned the town like everyone else. Most people already had. But when he looked across the empty streets, the old church, and the remaining people with nowhere left to go, he made his decision. He would save Red Canyon, even if nobody stayed behind to thank him. Ethan rode across the desert, warning every remaining resident. Horses pulled supply wagons through heavy dust storms, while thunder rumbled far away in the mountains. Adults boarded windows, opened old water channels, and prepared for evacuation. For the first time in years, the people of Red Canyon stood together again. Then Victor Kane returned with even more armed men. He planned to force Ethan out before sunrise and finally take control of the town.
Inside the saloon, tension filled the room as Victor slowly placed a pistol on the wooden table. "You really think rain is coming?" he asked. Ethan looked toward the dark mountains, where lightning flashed across the sky. "Yes," he answered quietly. Moments later, Victor's men chased Ethan deep into the canyon. Horses raced through dust and thunder as warning shots echoed across the rocks. The storm grew larger above them with every passing second. Then the impossible happened. Rain. One drop hit the desert dirt, then another. Suddenly, the entire sky exploded with thunder as massive rainfall crashed across Red Canyon. Water rushed violently through the canyon roads, flooding streets within minutes. Victor's trucks became trapped in rising floodwater, while terrified men screamed for help. And Ethan saved them anyway. Even the men who had tried to destroy his town. Victor himself became trapped inside a sinking truck as floodwater swallowed the road around him. Ethan could have left him there. Instead, he rode Ghost directly into the rushing water and pulled Victor to safety. Shocked and exhausted, Victor looked at Ethan and asked, "Why save me?" Ethan stared across the flooded desert and answered quietly, "Because this town already lost too many people." By morning, the storm had finally passed. For the first time in 11 years, water flowed through Red Canyon. Adults rebuilt broken buildings together, while wet desert wind moved peacefully through the streets. Flowers slowly began growing from the soaked ground around town. Victor Kane left Red Canyon forever, disappearing into the desert without another word. And Sheriff Ethan Cole, he simply rode toward the sunrise on his black horse beneath the clearing sky. Not for glory, not for money, just peace. Far behind him, Red Canyon finally lived again. And somewhere above the Arizona desert, sunlight broke through the dark storm clouds as the lone sheriff disappeared into the horizon. Sometimes heroes don't save towns with bullets. Sometimes they save them by staying when everyone else leaves.